Hare Krishna, yes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, Text 17. Pranena kshipata antarajaayate vibho पिपासतो जक्षतश्च प्राणमुखं निराब्धीयता.
Hare Krishna. The living force, being agitated by the Virat Purusha, generated hunger and thirst, and when he desired to drink and eat, the mouth opened.
Text 18. मुखतस्तालुनिर्भिन्नं जिह्वा तत्रोपजायते ततो नानारसो जाग्ने जिह्वयायुदिगम्यते.
From the mouth the palate became manifested, and thereupon the tongue was also generated. After this, all the different tastes came into existence, so that the tongue can relish them.
Text 19. विवक्षोर्मुखतो भूम्नो वाणीर्वाग्व्याहृतं तयोः जले चैतस्य शुचिरं निरोधा समजायत.
When the Supreme desired to speak, speeches were vibrated from the mouth, then the controlling deity fire was generated from the mouth. But when he was lying in the water, all these functions remained suspended.
Text 20. नासिके निरभिद्येतां दोधुयते नभस्वति तत्र वायुर्गन्धवाहो घ्राणो नासे जिघ्रक्षतः.
Thereafter, when the Supreme Purusha desired to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration were generated. The nasal instrument and odor came into existence, and the controlling deity of air carrying smell also became manifested.
Text 21. यदात्मानि निरालोकम् आत्मानं च दिद्रक्षतः निर्भिने हि अक्षिणे तस्य ज्योतिश्चक्षुर्गुणगृहः.
Thus, when everything existed in darkness, the Lord desired to see himself and all that was created. Then the eyes, the illuminating God Sun, the power of vision, and the object of sight all became manifested.
Text 22. बोध्यामानस्य ऋषिभिरात्मनस्तज्जिघ्रक्षतः कर्णो च निरभिद्येतां दिशा श्रोत्रं गुणाग्रहः.
By development of the desire of the great sages to know, the ears, the power of hearing, the controlling deity of hearing, and the objects of hearing became manifested. The great sages desired to hear about the self.
Text 23. Vastuno mridu kathinya lagu gruvvoshna जिघ्रक्षतस्त्वन्निर्भिन्ना तस्यं रोमा महीरुहा तत्र चान्तरार्बहिर्वातस्त्वचा लब्धगुणो वृतः.
When there was a desire to perceive the physical characteristics of matter, such as softness, hardness, warmth, cold, lightness, and heaviness, the background of sensation, the skin pores, the hair on the body, and the controlling deities, the trees, were generated. Within and outside the skin is a covering of air through which sense perception became prominent.
Text 24. हस्तौरुरुहस्तु तस्य नानाकर्मा चिकीर्षया तयोस्तु बलवानिन्द्र आदानम् उभयाश्रयाम्.
Thereafter, when the Supreme Person desired to perform varieties of work, the two hands and their controlling strength, and Indra, the demigod in heaven, became manifested, as also the acts dependent on both the hands and the demigods.
Text 25. Gatim jigashata padu ruruhate bhikamikam pavyam yagya swayam havyam karma bhi kriyate nribhi.
Thereupon, because of his desiring to control movement, his legs became manifested, and from the legs, the controlling deity named Vishnu was generated. By his personal supervision of this act, all varieties of human being are busily engaged in dutiful occupational sacrifice.
Text 26. निराभिद्यताशिष्णो वै प्रजानन्दामृतार्थिनः उपस्था आसीत् कामानां प्रियं तदुभयाश्रयम्.
Thereupon, for sexual pleasure, begetting offspring, and tasting heavenly nectar, the Lord developed the genitals, and thus there is the genital organ and its controlling deity, the Prajapati. The object of sexual pleasure and the controlling deity are under the control of the genitals of the Lord.
Text 27. उच्छिश्रक्षोर्धातुमलं निराभिद्यत वैगुदं ततः पायुस्ततो मित्र उत्सर्ग उभयाश्रयः.
Thereafter, when he desired to evacuate the refuse of edibles, the evacuation hall, anus, and the sensory organ thereof developed along with the controlling deity Mitra. The sensory organ and the evacuating substance are both under the shelter of the controlling deity.
Text 28. आशिश्रक्षो पुरपूर्य नाभिद्वारम् अपानतः तत्रापानस्ततो मृत्युः पृथक् त्वाम् उभयाश्रयम्.
Thereafter, when he desired to move from one body to another, the navel and the air of departure and death were combinedly created. The navel is the shelter for both, namely death and the separating force.
Text 29. आदित्सोर् अन्नपानानाम् आसन् कुक्ष्यन्त्र नादयः नद्य समुद्रश्च तयोस्तुष्टिपुष्टे तदाश्रये.
When there was a desire to have food and drink, the abdomen and the intestines and also the arteries became manifested. The rivers and seas are the sources of these sustenance and metabolism.
Text 30. निदिध्यासोरात्ममायां हृदयं निरभिद्यत ततो मनश्चन्द्र इति संकल्पः काम एव च.
When there was a desire to think about the activities of his own energy, then the heart, the seat of the mind, the moon, determination, and all desire became manifested.
Text 31. त्वक्चर्ममांसरुधिर मेदोमजस्ति धात्वः भूम्यप्तेजोमया सप्त प्राणो व्योमाम्बुवायुभिः.
The seven elements of the body, namely the thin layer on the skin itself, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow, and bone, are all made of earth, water, and fire, whereas the life breath is produced by the sky, water, and air.
Text 32. गुणात्मकानीन्द्रियाणि भूतादिप्रभवा गुणः मनः सर्वविकारात्मा बुद्धिर्विज्ञानरूपिणी.
The sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature, and the modes of material nature are products of the false ego. The mind is subjected to all kinds of material experiences and, happiness and distress, and the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation.
Text 33. एतद् भगवतो रूपं स्थूलं ते व्याहृतं मया मह्यादिभिश्चावरणैरस्तभिर्बाहिरावृतम्
This, by all these, the external feature of the personality of Godhead is covered by gross forms such as those of planets, which were explained to you by me.
Text 34. अतः परं सूक्ष्मतमाम् अव्यक्तां निर्विशेषणम् अनादिमध्यनिधानां नित्यां वाङ्मनसा परम्.
Therefore, beyond this gross manifestation is a transcendental manifestation, finer than the finest form. It has no beginning, no intermediate stage, and no end. Therefore, it is beyond the limits of expression or mental speculation, and is distinct from the material conception.
Text 35. अमूनि भगवद्रूपे मया ते हि अनुवर्णिते उभे अपि न गृह्णन्ति माया सृष्टे विपाश्चितः.
Neither of the above forms of the Lord, as just described unto you from the material angle of vision, is accepted by the pure devotees of the Lord who know him well.
Text 36. सवाच्य वाचकतया भगवान् ब्रह्मरूपधृक् नामरूपक्रियाधाते सकर्मा कर्मकः परः.
He, the personality of Godhead, manifests himself in a transcendental form, being the subject of his transcendental name, quality, pastimes, entourage, and transcendental variedness. Although he is unaffected by all such activities, he appears to be so engaged.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Sorry
Hare
for any
Krishna.
mistakes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. Wonderful recitation. Sorry, I just joined few minutes ago. I was outside, just stepped in the house now. So just give me 2 minutes. Can you all see the slides on the screen now?
Yes,
Yes,
Mataji.
Mata.
Yeah.
Excellent. We'll recite the prayers together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यामनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कथा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिका कान्ता राधा कान्ता नमोऽस्तु ते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam, pangum langhayate girim, yatkripātamaham vande Shri Guru Dīnataranam, Paramananda Madhavam, Krishna Chaitanya Ishwaram. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयामुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकीम् सतां प्रसङ्गान् मम वीर्यसंविदो भवन्ति यत्कर्णरसायण कथाः सज्जोषनादाशपवर्गवर्त्मनि श्रद्धारतिर्भक्तिरनुक्रमिष्यति. Let's read the beautiful translation today. In the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin. So wonderful. So we are on the towards the last verses of the 10th chapter of second canto, which is entitled Bhagavatam is answer to all the questions. And as we know, the first 9 verses they explain the 10 characteristics of Bhagavatam Purana, and the verses 10 to 35 then discusses the Sarga, creation of the Virat Rupa. This is the answer to the question Parikshit Maharaj had asked in 8th chapter in 11th verse. And 17 to 30 are the creation procedure explained, whereby we know that by the desire of the Virat Rupa, this gross organ is generated, and from there is also a subtle organ, sense devta, who is controlling the activities of that particular gross organ, also sanctioning it and blessing the jiva to be able to do that function, and tanmatras. So there is for example, we had discussed last time, if we say, for example, Lord desires to see, then that will also the desire of the jiva, because Lord desires. And how we had discussed that, because Virat Rupa is the aggregate of all the souls, together everyone's desire, it's like that's the desire of the Virat Rupa. It is a bona fide imaginary, temporary form of the Lord, because everything comes from Lord, as we know. Mahavishnu, then Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and all the senses, everything we have within our body that is made of gross material elements, which are earth, water, fire, air, ether, and subtle also. The subtle body we have, mind, intelligence, and ego, it all comes, all the elements come, all the senses, all the jivas come from the Lord. And then Brahma does the further creation, Visarga, whereby he puts all these jiva in particular planets where they belong, all the different species. That's why there are 14 planetary systems in our universe. And this is how we came, that we had just seen one desire, which was to see. To see, we obviously need eyes, that is the gross organ. Then there is a subtle organ which is called chakshu. And to be able to see any object, we need light. Even if the eyes are okay, if it is completely pitch black and dark, we cannot see. So there should be light. And the artificial light we have at home also, we are able to see. But the main source is the Surya Devta, who is the sense Devta of the desire to be able to see. That is called the controlling deity. And they are all functioning under the order of Vishnu, Krishna. Obviously, they are parts and parcel again, and they are not independent. They are they are working as a representative of the Lord in this universe to be able to, for the jivas to be able to function. So nobody is independent. Even Brahma, the first person in our universe, he himself is not independent. Even later on, in Bhagavatam, there is, I think, third canto where it says that those people who are worshipping Brahma, even they, if their particular Brahma is completely dependent on the Lord and he is worshipping Krishna as a supreme personality of Godhead, then his followers, if Brahma liberates, then his followers will liberate with him. But if that particular Brahma also is not fully dependent on Lord or not fully Krishna conscious, then even his dependents will not achieve the liberation. So it is totally the consciousness and having this complete understanding of basically our identity, who we are, who we belong to. And that's how, if we know that we are part and parcel of Krishna, if we understand this Bhagavad Gita verse, Mamai Vamso Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Everybody is part and parcel of Krishna. If we understand that, then with that consciousness, if we are doing our daily activities, then that is the actual real knowledge that Bhagavatam gives. That nobody is independent. Everyone depends on the Lord. The universe has come into creation because of Lord's desire, and then He provides everything as well, all the elements and everything, even us, the souls are coming from the Lord. So I think we are diverting a bit the topic. So just coming back to the topic, this is basic thing. If we understand, then all the remaining verses up to 30, we had seen this table from Bhagavatam Subodhini. It explains the gross sense organ, subtle sense organ, the devta that is controlling that activity, and what is the object and gross element. So today's verses, I'm told, are, if I'm not wrong, 24, 25, and 26. So we will just see these three things and then go back to Veda base and read together and discuss. Because I've been out today since 3 p.m. I have not prepared any slides, but kind of have some idea, and with the blessings of Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj, we'll try to discuss together. So 24th verse here, the Lord's desire is to perform activities. Say that is his desire, the verse says. He wants to perform activities. So the gross sense organ for that is hasta, hands. And the subtle sense organ is balam. The sense devta who is controlling that activity under the supervision of the Lord, because remember, even Indra is not independent. With the blessings of the Lord, Indra is the controlling deity of our hands. And what do we do with that? What is that activity? Various activities with the hands that we do from morning to night. And then the next verse, say the desire is to move about. Then the gross sense organ required is pada, legs. And karmabhir is the subtle sense organ. The deity controlling deity for the legs and movement is Upendra. And what activities perform? Moving. We move from one place to another because we have legs, we walk. And that's how we move about. And the 26 verse is to have sex and offspring. Sishna, genitals, is the gross organ. Upastha is the subtle sense organ. Prajapati is the controlling deity. And what happens with that activity is procreation. Children, right? In human beings, children, and even in other many species, insects, animals, their offspring. So these are the three verses we are going to discuss today. And so I'll open the Veda base. Is 21024 visible on screen?
Yes, Mataji.
I can't hear you. Yes?
Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry. The volume was really low on my computer. Can you hear me? Okay. So
Yes, Mataji. Yes.
24. Okay. Okay. Thank you. हस्तौरुरुहतुस्तस्य नानाकर्म चिकीर्षया तयोस्तु बलवानिन्द्र आदानम् उभयाश्रयम्. Synonyms: Hastau, the hands; Ruruhatu, manifested; Tasya, his; Nana, various; Karma, work; Chikirshaya, being so desirous; Tayoho, of them; Tu, however; Balwan, to give strength; Indra, the demigod in heaven; Adanam, activities of the hand; Ubhaya Ashrayam, dependent on both the demigod and the hand. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thereafter, when the Supreme Person desired to perform varieties of work, the two hands and their controlling strength and Indra, the demigod in heaven, became manifested, as also the acts dependent on both the hands and the demigod. Purport. In every item, we can note with profit that the sense organs of the living entity are never independent at any stage. The Lord is known as the Lord of the senses, Rishikesha. Thus, the sense organs of the living entities are manifested by the will of the Lord, and each organ is controlled by a certain type of demigod. No one, therefore, can claim any proprietorship of the senses. The living entity is controlled by the senses. The senses are controlled by the demigods. And the demigods are the servants of the Supreme Lord. That is the arrangement in the system of creation. The whole thing is controlled ultimately by the Supreme Lord, and there is no independence either of the material nature or of the living entity. The illusion living entity who claims to be the Lord of his senses is under the clutches of the external energy of the Lord. As long as a living entity continues to be puffed up by his tiny existence, he is to be understood to be under the stringent control of the external energy of the Lord. And there is no question of liberation from the clutches of illusion Maya. However much one may declare himself a liberated soul. So wonderful and nicely explained here. So basically, this verse talks about the activities of the hands that the Supreme Person, Virat Rupa, desired to perform various activities, various work, like the Jivas also desire the same. For that, we need hands. And the Bala is the subtle sense organ, and the controlling deity is Indra, who is demigod in heaven. Indra is the demigod in heaven, and he is the king of heaven. He became manifested as also the acts dependent on both the hands and the demigod. So here Srila Prabhupada clearly says that even the demigod is not independent. He is controlled by the Lord. Say the living entity is controlled by senses, right? Why we are controlled by the senses? Because we are bound by the modes. Depending on what mode we are in, goodness, passion, or ignorance, accordingly we will have desires. And then we will, the mind will have the desires. If the mind is um, being controlled by the false ego of the person, then that mind is a culprit and he gets controlled by the senses. Because if the ego says that I am so and so identity and I want to enjoy in this way, then the mind being in the mode of goodness listens nicely to this ego, because at this time it is controlled by the ego, false identity, and he will use his senses to fulfill those desires of that ego. For example, he wants to eat nice foodstuffs, or he wants to watch a movie, or he wants to go to the club, or this ego thinks that I am so and so proprietor and I can control so and so subordinates in certain way without, executing the right kind of discrimination. Then mind is subservient. So if it is under control of that ego, then he will use his senses to control the subordinates wrongly. But if that same mind if it is dovetailed in the devotional service of the Lord, then that mind becomes the best friend of that soul. So everything actually boils down at the end of the day with the mind. It is all the game of the mind. The mind should not control us. The jiva should control the mind by feeding it the right thoughts, making the right choices. Because as I said, if the mind listens to the ego, mind will make a wrong choice. But if the person has cultivated to live life in mode of goodness, taking shelter of shastras, by sharpening the intelligence, by studying the scriptures, and following the instructions of the bona fide guru, then that soul will control the mind nicely and give mind the right instructions to live in the right way. Thus, that mind will also control the senses nicely by utilizing it in the Lord's service. And these senses are controlled by the demigods, and the demigods are the servants of the Supreme Lord. So, at the end, it is always, or on top of everything, always is Supreme Lord, who is the creator, maintainer, and one who will also annihilate the material universe, but at the same time, he is extremely merciful. He wants us to live a good life in the way by following the bhakti practices, because at the end of the life, the right way to pass the exam is Ante Narayana Smriti, and that will happen if throughout the life we remember the Lord and the senses are chaste when they are used in the services of the Lord. Say, my power of speech is actually unchaste if I don't use it in doing the kirtan of the Lord. I was reading today, Srila Prabhupada was explaining that kirtan is of two types. When we are singing the bhajans and kirtans and holy name, and kirtan is also reading and speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. So when you are speaking or Bhagavad Gita, scriptures, when you are speaking Bhagavatam, that is also kirtan. And when you are singing the glories of the Lord, that is also kirtan. So if we are using our senses, my power of speech in that way, then at this time, while we are all using our senses, how many of us we have all connected at the same time on our laptop through that or mobile phone? You are using your ears for shravanam. That way your ears are used in the most chaste way that pleases the Lord, and it is the most beneficial for us because we are given this human body. The best utilization of it is to use the body and senses in Lord's service. And when we are speaking, reading, chanting, that is the service also. So I am speaking. So right now the power of speech is being used in the Lord's service, and our minds, everything we are trying very hard to dovetail it in this way. So we are Krishna conscious and our senses are chaste. So this is just one example. But over Janmashtami, over 2 days, we saw how amazing it was. Everyone's using their hands to cook, to distribute books to every part of their body. Like we've seen, I did not get any chance to go to any pandal or anything, watch any dramas because I was in other service in old Prashadam room in donations. But and making garlands, very fortunate to get that service today for Janmashtami for a short time, but very, very grateful. So we were all to make garlands here using hands. We are walking, all the devotees, say from kitchen to the prashadam area, bringing so much prasad. All the devotees are cooking wonderful, wonderful feast was there in the food tent. There is so much distributing books, dramas, skits. Uh, the girls, they are doing gopi dots to little children and applying henna, and there was, I heard, 108 japa steps area is there. Everyone was chanting japa and walking using their legs, one step after another. 108 steps they were going. So the entire atmosphere was buzzing with devotional service everywhere. If you look, everybody is using their senses, For Krishna, even having prasadam, everyone is using their senses for Krishna. And Janmashtami festival is one example that I can think of right now that this verse explains. Let's use our service in the service of Krishna. Why? Because if we want to liberate, we need to take shelter of Rishikesha. He is the Lord of the senses. He is the person, a supreme person who can control our senses in the right way. Because those who are bound by modes, say if we are bound by chains, you are bound, I am bound, then you cannot untie me, I can't untie you. But one who is not tied up with those chains, only he can come and untie us both or everyone, and that is Rishikesha. That is Krishna, because he is the only one who is not bound by modes. And here Srila Prabhupada explains that is the external energy of the Lord, right? Durga Devi, who is the jailer of this material world. She is a wonderful servant of the Lord. So she is very nicely doing her duty because there is a test for us. So like a jailer keeps all the prisoners in the jail because he can't just let them out. Otherwise there'll be chaos, but if they reform and if they become good, they go out in the same way. Maya Devi is controlling us, but she's saying, look, at the same time, you have this option and choice. If you use your free will rightly, you can go out and go back to Krishna, but you have to pass the test. That's why it is saying here, clutches of illusion, Maya. It is like we are in the clutches, but at the same time, we have the knowledge of Bhagavatam. We have a wonderful, exalted Vaishnavas, Guru, and Srila Prabhupada's books, so that we have this some knowledge here. We have come to some kind of awareness that what we are going through. So basically, this verse is saying that Rishikesha, and also in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, verse 15, if you have time, you can read the purport of Srila Prabhupada there. It says that Lord Krishna is referred to as Rishikesha here because he is the owner of all the senses. The living entities are part and parcel of Krishna, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of Krishna's senses. So, the Lord situated in heart of all the living entities, he directs their senses. But he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity. And in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. So, to the degree we are surrendered, to that degree our senses are controlled by Lord himself as Bhagwan. And this is how, in the case of a pure devotee, his senses are completely controlled by the Lord. So he is like in Sattva Guna, he is beyond the modes, and Lord takes over, which is the best scenario, which is what we are praying for. That may that also happen to us one day, that Lord, and we are able to surrender in that way, so that Krishna will take over all the functions of our senses. Thus, we will use them in the right way. So then the second verse. Gatim jigishata padau ruruhate bhikamikam padbhyam yagna swayam havyam karma bhi kriyate nrubihi. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Thereupon, because of his desiring to control movement, his legs became manifested, and from the legs the controlling deity named Vishnu was generated. By his personal supervision of this act, all varieties of human beings are busily engaged in dutiful occupational sacrifice. Purport. Anyone wants to read the first paragraph?
Hare Krishna Mataji, can I read, please?
Yes, please, Sakshi Mataji.
Thank you, ma'am. Every human being is engaged in his particular occupational duty, and such activities are visible as men go hither and thither. This is very prominently visible in big cities of the world. People are going all over the cities with great concern from one place to another. This movement is not limited only to the cities, but is also visible outside the cities from one place to another or from one city to another by different means of vehicles. Men are moving by cars and rails on the roads, by subways within the earth, and by planes in the sky for the purpose of business and success. But in all these movements, the real purpose is to earn wealth for comfortable life. For this comfortable life, the scientist is engaged, the artist is engaged, the engineer is engaged, the technician is engaged, all in different branches of human activity. But they do not know how to make the activities purposeful to fulfill the mission of human life. Because they do not know the secret, all their activities are targeted towards the goal of sense gratification without control. And therefore, by all this business, they are unknowingly entering into the deep regions of darkness.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mataji, for the
Mataji, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Because they have been captivated by the external energy of the Supreme Lord, they have completely forgotten the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and thus they have taken it for granted that this life, as presently manifested under the conditions of material nature, is all in all for enjoying the highest amount of sense gratification. By such a wrong conception of life cannot give anyone the desired peace of mind. And thus, in spite of all advancement in knowledge by use of the resources of nature, no one is happy in this material civilization. The secret is that at every step they should try to execute sacrifices towards the path of world peace. Bhagavad Gita 18:45-46 also advises the same secret in the following verses. स्वे स्वे कर्मण्यभिरतः संसिद्धिं लभते नरः स्वकर्मनिरतसिद्धिं यथा विन्दति तच्छृणु यतः प्रवृत्तिर्भूतानां येन सर्वम् इदं ततं स्वकर्मणा तम् अभ्यर्च्य सिद्धिं विन्दति मानवः. The Lord said to Arjun, just hear from me how one can attain the highest perfection in life simply by discharging his specified occupational duty. Man can attain the highest perfection of life by worshipping the Supreme Lord and by performing sacrifice for the sake of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is all pervading and by whose control every living being acquires his desired facilities according to his personal propensity. There is no harm in having different propensities in life because every human being is proportionately independent to chalk out the plan of his life by different occupations. But one should make it a point in his life to know perfectly well that he is not independent absolutely. One is certainly under the control of the Supreme Lord and under different agencies. Knowing this, one should make it a point that by his work and the result of his labor, he serves the Supreme Lord as prescribed by the authorities expert in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. For performing such occupational duties of life, the leg is the most important instrument of the body because without the help of the legs, one cannot move from one place to another. And therefore, the Lord has special control over the legs of all human beings, which are meant for performing yagnas. Now here the function activities of movement is described, and so how do we move? That happens by the legs, and the controlling deity is Vishnu here. So here at the end also occupational duties are also mentioned here. That is, whatever varna and ashrama we are in, we do that occupational duty nicely, but we do it for the Lord. That's what performing yagnas means here, as per my understanding. That it's not just talking about here when we think of yagna, we think of fire sacrifice, right? I mean, that's how I would always think. But yagna is also Sankirtan yagna, what we are doing, congregational chanting and hearing and shravanam and reading of the holy names and pastimes of the Lord. That is also yagna. Offering the bhoga to the Lord and then partaking that prasadam is also called a sacrifice in yagna. So we do not eat anything without offering it first to the Lord That way, we are acknowledging the supremacy of the Lord and our dependence. And just now, in the earlier verse, I mean, in Bhagavad Gita 1.15, we read in the Papa Chila Prabhupada says that to the degree we are surrendered, to that degree, Lord will take control of all our senses and guide us. So, when we are doing any kind of sacrifice or yagna, chanting, reading, hearing, going to holy dham, holy places, using our legs, right, and using all other senses, that also comes under yagna because we are doing this austerity to satisfy the Lord. At the end, what is the goal? Goal is not satisfying our senses, not sense gratification, but satisfying senses of the Lord. I mean, we are nobody to satisfy his senses, but what it means is that, Lord, I am performing this action because I want you to be happy. That's what a devotee's goal is, to make Krishna happy. If Krishna is happy, Vaishnavas are happy, I am happy. That's the way devotee thinks. So, whenever we are performing some activity, cooking nice prasadam, food stuff, bhoga, or making nice garlands, or decorating the deities in our hand, or inviting the Vaishnavas in our house, and preparing nice prasadam foodstuffs for them, saying, using sweet words, offering them nice seat, and giving glass of water, and praising them appropriately, rightly. All of these activities we are doing, we want to win the favor of the Lord and the devotees. We want them to be genuinely happy with us. Then they will shower the blessings on us, and then Lord will be happy if devotees are happy. So these all comes under performing the yagnas. So that's what it is means here. That also use your legs for the right purpose. See, obviously we have to do our occupational duty. If I'm working in an office, I have to use my legs from get to A to B, door to door, from my home to office. I'm using my legs, but with this consciousness that, Lord, I'm doing this activity. I'm now going to work in a place, whatever my profession could be. I'm accountant, engineer, teacher, or doctor, or a student studying. Please guide me. I'm doing this for you. I want to make you happy at the end, with this activity. If that is the consciousness, then that is the best utility of those legs used from going A to B. That's my understanding here. And I'm just going to open up these words. Has the page changed to 9, 4, 18 to 20 words?
Yes, Mataji.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so this is one of my favorite verses. Ambarish Maharaj, he's the best example of how he uses all his senses in the service of the Lord. This is the best way to utilize one's senses, and we will read someone can read the purport and translation, recite the beautiful shlokas. Because if we can really, it's a very high standard, but then we have to start somewhere, and this is a really nice way to meditate, that how to use our senses. So Amrish Maharaj did this. Savai mana Krishna padarvindayor vachamsi vaikuntha gunanuvarnane karau harer mandir marjanadishu shrutim chakara chita satkathodaye mukunda lingalaya darshane drishau तद्भृत्य गात्र स्पर्शेन्द्रसङ्गमम् प्राणं च तत्पादसरोजसौरभे श्रीमत्तुलस्या रसनां तदर्पिते पादौ हरेर्क्षेत्रपदानुसर्पणे शिरोरुचिकेशपदाभिवन्दने कामं च दास्येन तु कामकाम्यया यथोत्तमश्लोकजनाश्रया रतिः. Someone wants to read the wonderful translation here?
Hare Krishna, can I read, please?
Yes, please, Mataji, please read.
Thank you. Maharaj Amrish.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think you are unmuted. Can you unmute, Mataji?
Yeah, sure. Maharaj Amrish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. his words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples, and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi offered to the Lord, and he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasada. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord, his head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord. 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Amrish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service, in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mataji. So yes, I hope everyone agrees with me. These verses and translation are so wonderful and so beautiful. Even reading them gives such a nice, it's like peace of mind and satisfaction that when we kind of judge our own activities during the day, that how we have used our senses, some of this, at least some percentage, we are doing some of these activities or most of these activities. Some of us might be doing all of these activities some part of the day, and that is so wonderful. That's the best use of senses, and the senses are completely chaste when used to satisfy the Lord. There is also one more verse in that connection in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela. सर्वोपधि विनिर्मुक्तं तत्परत्वेन निर्मलं ऋषिकेन ऋषिकेश सेवनम bhakti रुच्यते. Bhakti or devotional service. So this is the definition of bhakti. What is bhakti? Bhakti means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations. You know, we are speaking about how our mind gets overtaken by the ego and the wrong material designation and identities. One will become free from that. And secondly, one's senses are purified, simply being employed in the service of the Lord. Exactly, right? If we come out of the false identity, then what is the correct identity? That is being servant of the Lord. So second effect is senses are purified, and we will come into the position of being a servant of the Lord, serving the Lord. So that this is also another wonderful verse. And we will now go back to our next verse. It is verse number 26. Okay, so we will recite. निरभिद्यत शिष्णो वै प्रजानन्दामृतार्थिनः उपस्थ आसीत् कामानां प्रियं तत् उभयाश्रयम्. Thereupon, for sexual pleasure, begetting offspring, and tasting heavenly nectar, the Lord developed the genitals. And thus there is the genital organ and its controlling deity, Prajapati. The object of sexual pleasure and the controlling deity are under the control of the genitals of the Lord. Okay. So, anyone wants to read the purport?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Mataji. Hare Krishna
Yes,
Mataji.
Mataji, you can read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Madhumati.
Okay. All right. The heavenly pleasure for the conditioned soul is sexual pleasure, and the pleasure is tested by the genitals. The woman is object of sexual pleasure, and both the sense perception of sexual pleasure and the woman are controlled by the Prajapati, who is under the control of the Lord's genitals. The impersonalist must know from this verse that the Lord is not impersonal, for he has his genitals on which all the pleasurable objects of sex depend. No one would have taken the trouble to maintain children if there were no taste of heavenly nectar by means of sexual intercourse. This material world is created to give the conditioned souls a chance for rejuvenation, for going back home, back to Godhead, and therefore generation of the living being is necessary for upkeep of the purpose of creation.
Thank you,
Sexual
Mataji. I think we will
aspect.
stop there. Thank you so much. We can all read the
Thank you.
purport at our own time, but I think we have only got 5 minutes left. So basically, what is Prabhupada saying, and the gist of this purport and this translation here is saying that when a man and a woman come together in a sacred marriage, the purpose of having children is, Prabhupada says, to give a soul a chance for rejuvenation, for going back home, back to Godhead. And that is the real purpose. It is not sense gratification, but the real goal is it's a sacred activity whereby it is a service to the Lord to give a soul a chance to come into this world so that they get another opportunity to perform bhakti in a favorable situation and go back to Godhead. So that is also a service to the Lord, and that is also one of the duties of a grihastha ashram. So in that context, there is one episode in fifth canto, and moreover, there is also one verse in that respect in 5:5:18. Let's see. Can you see 5:5:18 on the screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah. गुरुर्न स स्यात् स्वजनो न स स्यात् पिता न स स्यात् जननी न सा स्यात् दैवं न तत् स्यान्न पतिश्च स स्यान्न मोचयेद्यः समुपेत मृत्युम्. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. So, what is this saying here is that being in this position is a great responsibility. If you are a spiritual master, if father, husband, or a mother, so even a husband is supposed to take control, charge of his wife and guide her in the devotional service in bhakti very nicely, because guru and the husband, they are both, husband is also a guru who will guide his wife in bhakti in devotional service, and because wife is the dependent. For spiritual master, the disciple is the dependent. And so that is his responsibility to guide that soul back to Godhead. And father and mother, see, in that respect, I thought it makes sense of this verse is that becoming parents, having children, is the main activity is to then bring up the child in a nice devotional way, so that the child learns from the, you know, that verse from Kaumara Macharet Pragno, when they are very young, if their consciousness is nicely developed in bhakti, then that child will grow up to perform nice bhakti as he grows up, because he's given that favorable atmosphere at home. And in that sense also, there is one episode in fifth canto where thereby there is Uttanapad's, one of the sons is a great Priyavrat Maharaj. And when that is why in this episode we will learn that how the consciousness of the parents, the mother and father, matters so much when they conceive a child. If their consciousness is dovetailed in Krishna, then they will also invite a good pious soul into that family, and that way that soul will be inclined to bhakti also, and the parents will give a nice favorable solid atmosphere as well. So then that soul will have a very solid chance to go back to Godhead. So our consciousness matters a lot. As a service to the Lord, you bring a child into this world with a service with that the soul gets a chance, and that is the main point here, because Priyavrat Maharaj was not in the right consciousness when him and his wife conceived their son Agnidra. So when Agnidra is conceived, Priyavrat Maharaj had lusty desires. That is why the son born here also throughout his life has so many other desires. But Priyavrat Maharaj gave birth to three Manus.
ये
Such
मोदी
exalted sons were
हाँ
born to him, except this one son, Agnitra. Why? Because at the time of conception, Priyavrat Maharaj mentality was not in the right place. That is why it's our duty that our consciousness is always we should try very hard for Krishna consciousness, because when we chant our rounds nicely early in the morning and perform all the other activities, deity worship and everything, then our consciousness will also be in the right way to bring the right soul at that time. And then Agnitra has then desires to go to Pitrulok, not going back to Godhead. Instead, he wanted to go back to Pitruloka. And it says also here in the fifth canto, second chapter, second verse, if you read, it says here that since Maharaj Priyavrat was a great devotee, how could he have begotten a son who desired to be transferred to Pitruloka? Because Krishna says, Pitranyanti Pitruvrataha. Persons who desire to go to Pitrulok are transferred there. And Yanti Matyaji Nopimam. Person who desire to be transferred to spiritual planets, Vaikuntha Loka, can go to Vaikuntha. But since Maharaj Agnitra was the son of a Vaishnava, he should have desired to go to spiritual world. So how comes he's desiring to go to Pitruloka? Because Pitruloka is still within material world, and he will have to come back down then when the pious credit is over, back to the earth planet. So it is not really bringing him any eternal benefit. But he had this material desire because at the time of his conception, his father's desires were lusty as well. So this may be accepted as a fact because sons are begotten with the different mentality according to the time of their conception. And according to the Vedic system, therefore, before a child is conceived, the Garbhadhan samskar is performed. And this ceremony molds the mentality of the father in such a way that when he plants his seed in the womb of his wife, he will beget a child whose mind will be completely saturated with devotional attitude. So this is how I understand this verse, that it is the duty of every householder to also have their own consciousness in Krishna consciousness by chanting and performing all the other samskaras, and invite a soul in this world who gets a good soul who gets again a solid chance and favorable condition to perform bhakti and go back to Godhead. And again, we know in Bhagavatam verse second, Dharma projita kaitavotra parmo nirmat saranam satam, right? Dharma artha kama moksha is basically it is moksha means not liberation of impersonal kind or this kind of material desires to go to Pitruloka or heavens, but wanting to advance in spiritual life, performing bhakti. That is what Bhagavatam propounds, the highest dharma, which is love to Krishna, bhakti unto Krishna. As we have seen, questions to so many answers in Bhagavatam, Shukdev Goswami says that Ante Narayana Smriti, it is bhakti to Krishna, and that is the main principle here. So there is many more things one can discuss. Also, there is an example of Narad Muni when he gives allegorical story to Prachin Barhi about Puranjan. In that episode, also this principle comes. It talks about how to invite a soul into this world as a service, and then give that soul, a child, the best chance to go back to Godhead by being a parent, a teacher, a guru, and helping that soul to go back to Godhead. So I would like to end here. Sorry, I've taken 5 minutes extra today, but we have three verses. So if anyone has anything to share, then please go ahead, or we can conclude for today. It is 8:50, and Yeah, if any corrections, anything from your side? Okay. So, Grantraj Shrimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai, Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Thank you, Mataji, for the nice. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji, for the nice class.
Thank
Very
you for
nicely
excellent
explained.
class.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you.
Nampavane Vaishnavanam. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.